Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Hinduism for Dummies by Dr. Amrutur V. Srinivasan. Narrated by Shah. Limit of liability, disclaimer of warranty. The publisher and the author make no representations or warranties with respect to the accuracy or completeness of the contents of this work, and specifically disclaim all warranties, including without limitation warranties of fitness for a particular purpose. No warranty may be created or extended by sales or promotional materials. The advice and strategies contained herein may not be suitable for every situation. This work is sold with the understanding that the publisher is not engaged in rendering legal, accounting, or other professional services. If professional assistance is required, the services of a competent professional person should be sought. Neither the publisher nor the author shall be liable for damages arising herefrom. The fact that an organization or website is referred to in this work as a citation and/or a potential source of further information does not mean that the author or the publisher endorses the information the organization or website may provide or recommendations it may make. Further, readers should be aware that Internet websites listed in this work may have changed or disappeared between when this work was written and when it is read. Introduction. There are 1 billion+ Hindus around the world today, and between 1.5 to 2.5 million Hindus in the United States. Perhaps your neighbor is a Hindu, or your child goes to school with Hindu children. Maybe your doctor or the guy at the gas station is Hindu. In just 4 decades, nearly 300 Hindu temples have sprung up in the United States alone. Still, Hinduism is not a household word in the Western world. Mainstream Hinduism does not proselytize. Hindus have no interest in making you see their way, because Hinduism's fundamental belief is that God has many names. Hindus believe your way may be just as good, and that you and they will meet at the end of the journey. Hinduism lets you be. With such a detached outlook, no wonder the faith remains a mystery to most. My aim with this book is to unlock that mystery and help you develop an understanding of this ancient religion. About this book. What does one have to do to understand Hinduism? How does one convey that the principal teachings of Hinduism are universal, positive, dynamic, and practical? Hinduism is perhaps the only religion that encourages you to have faith in your own faith. The concepts inherent in such a broad outlook on life need to be shared, which is what this book aims to do. Some books written about Hinduism are either too highbrow or too elementary. As alternatives, you could learn about Hinduism by going to India and studying in an ashram under a guru, which is the expensive option, or you can go to a center near you, if one exists. What you more likely need is a comprehensive text that gives you an overall picture of the religion and then elaborates on the principal concepts in an informative and enjoyable manner. Look no further. You have come to the right place. The chapters and the contents in this book are organized to help open the door to an understanding of Hinduism. There are certain facts and concepts that you need to know if you want to get a feel for this faith. Here are just a few examples. Concept of time and history. Given that Hinduism is the world's oldest religion, and that even scholars cannot agree on precise dates for most milestones, dates are estimates. They can vary not just by a few years here or there, but by centuries. The oral tradition of communicating and maintaining sacred findings lasted long after the invention of writing. That means few or no dated records exist before the Common Era. Further, Hindus believe that time is a continuum. There are no beginnings and no endings. This cyclical concept allows for a period of 4.32 million years divided into 4 yugas, sub-periods, with declining values from one yuga to another. We are now in what is known as Kali Yuga, the last of the 4, at the end of which a renewal takes place only to be repeated again and again. Geographical location. The geographical location for thousands of years during which Hinduism developed was mostly the subcontinent of India. In the past couple centuries, more Hindus have settled in distant lands, like the United States, where the community is thriving. Creed. Hinduism has evolved from its core belief in one supreme being to a belief in many representations of the same, from worshipping nature to worshipping deities in temples, distinguishing the supreme soul from an individual soul in one approach and maintaining no such distinction in another. All in parallel, all inclusive, all still flourishing, letting go of nothing. Even atheism is accepted. The stories. All of Hindu philosophy and theology is based in sacred scriptures called the Vedas and the Upanishads. But equally valuable lessons are learned through Puranas, God stories from the ancient past, and through Hindu epic stories from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Stories, thousands of them, within more stories, have helped keep the faith vivid, challenging, and alive through many thousands of years. In this book, you can find out about all these points and more. Keep in mind that whenever I say Hindus believe, I don't mean that every Hindu believes, but that most Hindus may believe. Conventions used in this book. In this book, I have avoided using Sanskrit lettering. Instead, I use transliteration, meaning that I use the English alphabet to spell the Sanskrit words. Spelling Sanskrit words in English is always tricky because Sanskrit has more sounds than English does, and it's based on long and short syllables rather than stressed syllables. But to keep things as simple as possible, I have avoided using diacritical marks except in Chapter 23 and 24. Also, when a name has been spelled a certain way, anglicized, for centuries, I have used the anglicized spelling. For example, I use Ganges instead of Ganga, Benares instead of Varanasi, and so on. For historical dating, I use BCE, before Common Era, or CE, Common Era, rather than BC and AD. Foolish assumptions. As I wrote this book, I made a few assumptions about you. If you are not a Hindu, you take an interest in faiths other than your own that may help provide a glimpse of light in regard to some of the hard questions of life. You have friends, family, or colleagues who are Hindus, and you want a better understanding of their faith. You are traveling to India and want to know more about Indian culture, which is largely built around the Hindu religion. If you are a Hindu, you should be on familiar territory, with a variety of useful information under one cover that can serve as a good reference for further exploration. How this book is organized. There's so much to know about Hinduism historically, geographically, religiously, and culturally that it can be overwhelming without a clear, easy-to-follow organizational framework. To help you find the information you need and understand the information you find, I've divided the content into chapters that each deal with a particular topic related to Hinduism, and then I organize these chapters into the following thematic parts. Part 1. Introducing Hinduism. I begin much the same way that ancient Hindu sages did, by first planting a seed that conveys all that is to come when it grows into a tree. Consider this part that seed. In it, I provide a big-picture view of Hinduism. Here, you get a condensed history followed by core values, major denominations, and Hindu societal structure. With this information in hand, or mind, you're ready to explore the topics in the other parts. Part 2. The Hindu Pantheon and its religious leaders. A topic of special interest, especially to Western readers, is the concept of polytheism. I present the evolution of this basic feature of Hinduism, beginning with pantheism, and then introduce you to Hinduism's many gods and goddesses and the various avatars. In this part, you can also find information about Hindu saints of lore, whose contributions and teachings are in use to this day. Part 3. The Sacred Texts. Hinduism is probably the oldest religion in the world, beginning long before humans had developed any writing system. In this part, you discover what was revealed to the ancient sages and how these findings were kept intact through a systematic oral tradition. These revelations appear in a series of sacred texts, beginning with the Vedas and followed by the Upanishads. Other important texts include two epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and the most sacred scripture of the Hindus, the Bhagavad Gita. Part 4. Hinduism in Practice. In this part, the rubber meets the road. Here, you find out how sacred thought and Hindu theology translate into what Hindus do from day to day. I explain how Hindus worship at home and at temples, and how they celebrate their festivals. This part also includes the Hindu rites of passage from cradle to cremation, and concludes with an examination of the Hindu penchant to travel to sacred places. Part 5. Delving deeper into the Hindu concept of reality. For those who want to dive deeper into Hindu philosophical thought, this part explains the darshanas, which examine 6 ways to see reality, the Vedanta, and the philosophies that emerged from it, monism, dualism, and qualified non-dualism, and the yogic path to attaining salvation. Yes, in Hinduism, yoga goes far beyond the exercises taught at your local yoga center. Part 6. The part of tense. Crisp, concise, and to the point. That's what you'll find in this part, where I share common questions, common prayers, and common pieces of advice. Chapters 23 and 24 are also where I include examples of the Sanskrit alphabet. Consider it a bonus. Icons used in this book. In this book, I use icons to identify particular kinds of information. You will hear the following icons verbalized in this audiobook. Hindu stories. This icon highlights traditional lessons or ideas and moral fables that Hindus learn from parents and elders, as well as familiar stories derived from the epics and Puranas. Sacred texts. This icon highlights concepts, ideas, mandates, and more that come out of any of the Hindu sacred books. Technical stuff. There's a lot to know about a religion as ancient and vast as Hinduism, but not all of it is vital. I use this icon to highlight interesting but non-essential topics, at least during your first reading. Tip. This icon highlights suggestions or comparisons I've included to help you understand the current topic or an idea that may be unfamiliar to you. Remember, information that appears beside this icon is important for your understanding of Hinduism. Beside this icon, you'll see key concepts, foundations of the faith, or other essential points that you'll want to remember. Where to go from here? With all the objectivity I, as a Hindu and author of this book, can muster, I suggest you read Part 1 entirely to get a good overview of Hinduism. Then look at the table of contents to identify what struck you most when you read Part 1. Perhaps you like the idea of festivals. If so, go to Chapter 16. If you're on your way to a Hindu temple, Chapter 15 is the one you're looking for. Attending a Hindu wedding? Go to Chapter 17. Maybe you are visiting a Hindu family. See Chapters 4 and 5. Or maybe you are a serious type or a student and want to go deeper or study Hindu philosophy. Head to Chapters 19 and 20. There's something here for everyone. Upon reading this book either in part or as a whole, if you are inclined to explore further, I suggest you read the epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, both of which cover every aspect of Hindu thought. Then I strongly recommend you read one speech, that of Swami Vivekananda, delivered at the World's Parliament of Religions in Chicago on September 11, 1893. If you're in a hurry, just read the last 4 paragraphs of the speech. In order to do so, go to any search engine and type in Vivekananda Chicago Address. Wherever you choose to begin reading this book, I hope you find passages that make you smile, wonder, and laugh. If you are a person of faith, I hope your faith in your own faith is enhanced after reading this book. If you are not a person of faith, you'll learn what makes people on the other side tick. Part 1. Introducing Hinduism. In this part. How did it all begin? In this part, I introduce you to Hinduism. A little bit of history gets you started as you learn the origin of the word Hindu, what Hindus believe in, what their value system is, and the variety of Hindu denominations. It is true that Hindus worship many gods, goddesses, and even animals, and in this part you find out why. You also learn about the caste system, and whether it is still in vogue today. I also introduce you to the key concepts of dharma and karma. Chapter 1. A quick overview of Hinduism. In this chapter, seeing the broad view of life in Hinduism, reviewing the core beliefs, learning about Hindu gods, goddesses, saints, and sacred texts, appreciating modes of worship and societal structure. Hinduism, the oldest and perhaps the most complex religion in the world, has its origin in India. It has survived as a faith for thousands of years, despite many outside influences, including invasions and occupations of the land. Hinduism has always been interested in and welcomed ideas from anywhere. One of its earliest sacred scriptures, known as the Rig Veda, declares, "Let noble thoughts come to us from all directions." While absorbing into its bosom almost all good ideas from outside, Hinduism has been successful at keeping its own good ideas intact. Its focus has always been, and continues to be, inward. It has little interest in convincing others to embrace its values. Therefore, Hindu religious leaders rarely try to convert others. Hinduism firmly believes in both a supreme being and the idea that other belief systems are as valid as its own. This flexibility may be one factor that has led to the religion's survival over the millennia. This chapter provides a very general overview of Hinduism, introducing you to the basic beliefs, ways to worship, and more. The Hindu worldview. Unlike Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and Buddhism, Hinduism has no founder. It has no single religious book, such as the Bible or Quran, as its basis. Nor is it an organized religion. Hinduism has no founding date. It has no hierarchy of priests and no organizational structure that relies on a powerful leader, such as a pope, at its head. There are no standard sacraments or rites of initiation accepted and practiced by all those who profess to be Hindus. With no such anchors, or even an expectation that the followers believe the same things, you won't be surprised to know that scholars have had a field day trying to assess Hinduism in a Western framework. Not only has that task been nearly impossible, but also it has led to hundreds of interpretations, some of which portray Hinduism as flexible, broad, and secular, and others that treat the religion with ridicule or doubt. When it comes to ultimate values, Hindu thought has never recognized or accepted any boundaries, be they geographical, racial, or otherwise. According to the Hindu worldview, truth is unquestionably valid universally. In fact, this belief leads to the universal outlook typical of Hindus. Remember, Hinduism, the oldest of all religions, has a unique perspective on life. It excludes nothing. Hinduism has as its adherents a broad spectrum of people who span from the extremely orthodox, immersed in elaborate ritual worship of the Almighty, to those who openly declare that they do not believe in any god. In fact, Hinduism's view of the world is epitomized by this declaration from one of its sacred scriptures, the Mahopanishad, chapter 6, verse 72. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means, the whole world is a family. This fundamental belief helps Hindus feel connected with the world. The belief that there is but one supreme soul from which everything, all living entities and inanimate objects, emerged, further strengthens the connection with the entire universe. Devout Hindus worship many gods and goddesses. They worship cows, monkeys, snakes, trees, plants, and even tools. They worship mountains, rivers, and oceans. In the life of a Hindu, every day of the week involves worship of a minor or major god or goddess, or the celebration of a festival. Religion is in the air for Hindus no matter where they are. The ideas and practices are at once complex and simple. But fear not. In this book, I help unravel some mysteries and still leave you with a sense of awe. A broad set of key beliefs. Survey after survey reveals that more than 95% of Hindus believe in the existence of God. A broad set of beliefs stem from the most basic of beliefs, and they include the following, which I discuss further in Chapter 3. Belief in the Supreme Soul. This being is identified as Brahman, universal spirit. Brahman is the one who reveals himself in the minds of the sages and seers as the supreme consciousness. Hindus understand Brahman to be the only thing real in the universe. All else is therefore unreal, false, or illusory, and untrue. Brahman sounds like an abstract entity, but is entirely real in every sense, the one and only reality. You can find out about Brahman and the other divine entities in Part 2. Belief that truth is the goal of life. The goal of life, according to Hindus, is to reach back to Brahman, the one reality, by realizing our true nature. That goal is defined as moksha, liberation from repeated cycles of births and deaths. The goal is to realize unity or oneness with Brahman. For that reason, the Hindu prays, Asato ma sat gamaya, which means, lead me from the unreal to the real. Belief in the authority of the Vedas. The Vedas are Hindu sacred books of knowledge, written in Sanskrit, the ancient and liturgical language of India. There are 4 Vedas, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Atharva Veda, and Sama Veda. Hindus believe that all 4 were revealed to Hindu sages. The Vedas contain hymns of praise to various gods, procedures for sacrificial rites and rituals, recommendations of cures for all ills, and musical chants appropriate at rituals. The Vedas are considered so sacred that the very definition of a Hindu is often stated as one who accepts and believes in the authority of the Vedas. Part 3 is devoted to the Vedas and the other important Hindu sacred texts. Belief in the idea that time is circular and not linear. According to this concept of time, there are no beginnings and no endings. Time is simply a continuum. Hindus define periods of time as cyclical in nature, with each cycle containing 4 sub-periods known as yugas, Krita, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. Added together, the 4 yugas total about 4.32 million years. At the end of each cycle, gradually declining time spans and human values lead to dissolution. Then another period starts, and the cycle repeats all over again. This view of time has helped in developing the ancient Hindu perspective on life, a perspective that allows for a tolerant view of events and people. Belief in karma and karmic consequences. Karma is action that relates to service, specifically service to society. Hindus believe that what we are today is the result of our actions in the past. It stands to reason that what we will be in the future depends on what we do now, this moment, and onward for the rest of this life. Belief in the concept of dharma. The root word for dharma is dra, which means to hold or to sustain, specifically within the context of maintaining harmony and balance in nature. Dharma, or right conduct, is so central to Hindu life that it encompasses everyone, irrespective of age, station in life, or caste. Each being has its own dharma consistent with its nature. A tiger's dharma, for example, is to kill and eat its prey. Yielding milk to sustain the life of the young is a cow's dharma. The dharma of humans is to serve. The word dharma appears quite frequently in this book, much like the word Veda. That's because, in some ways, understanding the concepts inherent in these 2 words is vital to understanding the Hindu faith. Belief in tolerance as the core value. Ancient universities and religious centers in India attracted students and visitors from many parts of the settled world. They invited debate and inquiry into religious ideas. With this same spirit, Modern Hindus accept all religions to be true and self-contained. A Hindu hymn asserts this view by comparing the various paths to God with hundreds of rivers and streams all mingling finally with the ocean. These fundamental beliefs have paved the way for Hindus to develop a philosophical outlook on life. This outlook is based firmly on the belief in an intimate connection between the individual soul, called Atman or Jivatman, and the Supreme Soul, called Paramatman. Broadly speaking, these fundamentals comprise a code of behavior that continues to form the contemporary Hindu view of life. A brief look at Hindu gods and goddesses. Early Hindu thought had a clear focus on the one supreme being. The Chandogya Upanishad, one of the sacred texts of Hindus, contains an eloquent phrase, Ekam eva advitiyam. It means, there is but one without a second. Yet Hinduism ended up embracing a large number of gods and goddesses. This one-size-doesn't-fit-all realization provided an extraordinary variety of choice for individuals to worship. The one without a second doctrine, however, which holds that God and the universe are one and the same, remains fundamental and is still preserved. The simple prayer offered by Hindus at the conclusion of any worship, irrespective of the god or goddesses being worshipped, sums it all up. You alone are our mother and father. You alone are our sibling and friend. You alone are our knowledge and prosperity. You alone are everything to us, my Lord, my Lord. Hindu mythology identifies three gods at the head of a hierarchy of gods. These three are Brahma, whose main function is to create; Vishnu, who sustains the created universe; Shiva, who is in charge of dissolution prior to the next time cycle of creation in an endless cycle. In simplistic terms, these three are sometimes referred to as creator, sustainer, and destroyer, respectively. Each of these major gods has a female consort, also playing a major role. Saraswati, consort of Brahma, is the goddess of learning. Lakshmi, consort of Vishnu, is the goddess of wealth and well-being. Devi, Shiva's consort, represents the creative power known as Shakti. Below these primary gods are a variety of forms of gods, including the avatars of Vishnu, which I explain in Chapter 8. Many temples exist and continue to be built for Shiva, his sons, Ganapati and Murugan, the previous goddesses named, and the various forms of Vishnu. The concept and presence of Brahma is enshrined in the heart of every sanctified Hindu temple. See Chapter 15. During the early Vedic period, nature gods such as sun, wind, fire, and dawn were objects of Hindu worship. When was the early Vedic period? Different scholars offer widely differing dates, but probably between 1500 and 1000 BCE. These Vedic gods are invoked and worshipped in household rituals, weddings, and temple rituals to this day. Except for the sun god, no temples exist for other Vedic gods. However, hymns of praise for these gods fill the revealed sacred scriptures. The Vedic gods fall into several general categories. Nature gods, especially gods connected with weather and climate. Planetary gods who feature in destiny and the composition of horoscopes. Gods who rule over household health and wealth and community values. In addition, other gods and goddesses, who are regional and local, preside over small villages and towns. Their patronage is sought during natural disasters such as floods, epidemics, and the like. You can read much more on the subject of gods and goddesses in Chapter 7. Hindu religious leaders. Hinduism is a more than 5,000-year-old culture, philosophy, and faith, so you can imagine how many religious leaders have contributed to it. The number is very large, perhaps thousands, and covers a broad spectrum of people. Chapter 9 provides details on Hindu religious leaders. For now, I briefly describe what the various Hindu religious titles mean. Sages. In Hindu parlance, a sage, or rishi in Sanskrit, is an extraordinary spiritual person who is totally devoted to seeking reality and practicing austerities in remote environments such as caves and deep forests. Sages.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?